Welcome to the Alouettes Flightdeck, the podcast dedicated to Montreal Alouettes football. I'm Cliffy D. You can find me on X at Cliffy D.
And I'm Tim Capper. You can also find me on X at Repact. That's REPPACT. And this episode of the podcast is presented by our good friends over at SportBuff. If you use the promo code ALS Flightdeck 10 at checkout, you will save 10% off your entire order. So head over to sportbuffshop.com, use the promo code, save 10%, rep the merch of many pro leagues, and of course, support local.
And the Alouettes Flightdeck is all over the World Wide Web and social media. Make sure you check out our archive of our 7+ seasons of the Alouettes Flightdeck over at www.alouettesflightdeck.ca. Make sure you follow the show on X at AlouettesFLDeck. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/AlouettesFlightDeckPod. We're on Instagram at Alouettes Flightdeck. That also means we're on Threads at Alouettes Flightdeck. Make sure you check out our YouTube page at youtube.com/Alouettes Flightdeck for all of our Flight Deck lives and so much more. And last but certainly not least, make sure you check out our merch site at www.flightdeckgear.com.
And we'll say it too, because I'm going to get it right this week. You can find us over on Blue Sky too, Cliff? You can just search for at Repact, at Cliffy D, at Alouettes FL Deck. We'll pop up, so you can find us there too. Because we're actually posting there quite a bit. We're basically mirroring what we're doing over on X. So it's like you're getting us twice. Isn't that beautiful?
Double the pleasure, double the fun.
That's right. And speaking of double the pleasure, double the fun, we had the Hamilton Tiger Cats again this past week. Second week in a row.
Yeah, but this game actually, well, listen, the other one counted too, but this game was for, shall we say, all the marbles.
Well, the semi-final marbles, at least.
Yes. I mean, listen, if you want to be a part of the Grey Cup, you got to walk before you can run, right? So in order to get to that Grey Cup, you got to go to Toronto. You got to go play at BMO Field. But to have the privilege to do that, you got to play in the Eastern semifinal. And that's exactly what the Alouettes and the Tiger Cats did last Saturday.
Yep. And it was, I didn't know, off air between you and I wasn't sure how the Owls were going to perform. You can go into a game, you can't really be blinded as a fan or a supporter of Cliff, as you know. You just got to look at everything from every perspective that you could. But, I don't know why I went into this game as I was, because the Alouettes surprised me. They showed me exactly what they could do. You can tell that this team was ready to go. Something about everything within the organization led up to the semifinal win over the Hamilton Tiger Cats, where the Owls knocked them off 27-12 before just over 20,000 raucous fans at Percival Molson Stadium. It was just one hell of an atmosphere. And I don't, you know what? I know I may be in the minority on this one, but I actually didn't mind it being on a Saturday afternoon.
Likewise, I thought it was great. I mean, Saturday afternoon, the tailgate was rocking nice and early as always. So much fun to interact with Owls fans. It started out kind of slow, but then towards once noon hit, that's really when people started congregating. And I'm sure the fact that the Alouettes had a lot of activities for the tailgate as well probably helped a lot with that. A lot of alumni came, and you got a chance to do a meet and greet with them, which was
Mike Pringle.
Mike Pringle at the tailgate. So many others. Wow. I mean, just a lot of great names from the past as well. Man, it was just made for a great atmosphere. So much fun. Everybody was welcome as always. And then you get into the game itself, and yeah, it was just the atmosphere was like nothing else. Like it was playoff football. It was November football. It was everything that you wanted this game to be. 20,000 plus showed up. People rocked out. People had a great time. People made noise when they were supposed to. Everything was falling into place. I mean,
country roads in the fourth, baby.
Yes. Thank you. It only took 9 games for them to get it, but my God, they finally got it right. Playing Country Roads at the right time to let everybody else sing along and be a part of that atmosphere. So they got it right.
I could have taken another verse, but it's okay. Then they switched over to the Queen. Ew. It's okay.
No. You know what? It's funny. The first game of the year, the home opener, they played it and it was perfect. It was during victory formation. The Alouettes won their first game. You couldn't ask for anything better than that. I think the next time that they got it right was against Saskatchewan, if I'm not mistaken. Coming in out of a
TV timeout.
I think it was out of the TV timeout.
But it was late in the TV timeout. That's what I hated.
But it still carried on, and you still heard it throughout the TV broadcast as well, which is awesome. Ever since then, either didn't play it or played a snippet of it and just canceled out before you really got into it. But maybe it's because this was the last home game that's going to be played in Montreal in 2023. They had to do it right, and by God, they did. So props to I don't know if it's DJ Wordy Word that plays the music throughout the whole thing, or which member of the organization is in charge of playing the music. And you got it right. You got it right, and we are incredibly grateful for that.
Whoever had, true. And I know we've gotten off topic slightly, but we're still within the stadium. They are, whoever was doing the music was dead on, man. I mean, even during the scrum at the end of the game, what were everybody singing to?
It was Imagine by John Lennon.
Yeah, and everybody had the Fireflies because the Fireflies came out.
You know what? Talk about a moment in time. And it's so funny because at first everybody is pissed off because of this altercation. Like we'll go more into the details of it, but people were hot. People were just besides themselves, like, with what had taken place. And then I don't know what prompted the PA. Like I said, I honestly don't know who does the music, but flipped on John Lennon's Imagine. And it was so funny. Like it kind of the juxtaposition of everybody being pissed off and angry. Then all of a sudden people are singing along, and even the players are kind of doing the waving their hands
exactly.
In the air, like people were like arm in arm, just swaying back and forth too a little bit. Everybody's singing along, like you said. Everybody got their cell phone camera, the camera lights out, the fireflies that we like to call it, throughout the stadium, and just lit it up without any prompting. No prompting.
No, this one time, yeah, you're right. No prompting whatsoever.
It was organic. It was
like
natural.
It was way back when it happened originally in the Calgary game.
Exactly.
And they broke out Sweet Caroline also. It was like they're like last week. We literally had all of our favorite hits this week.
You know what? I guess because this was the finale, the home finale, so to speak, you got to go out with a bang. You got to send the fans home happy, and I think that's exactly how you do it. You play the hits, you do something like completely unexpected like that, and I tell you, like it got you in the feels. Like it's just kind of a great way just to calm everybody down from that whole fracas that happened on the field, and like I said, it just changed the mood immediately. And it just, you look out in the crowd, you see the lights, you see everybody singing, you see everybody in unison with this whole thing. And you're like, wow, what a time to be alive. What a moment in time. And you got to give major props to the Alouettes for doing that. It was just incredible. There's just no other word to describe that moment in time. It was probably not great if you were a Tiger Cats fan watching your team crash and burn like that, and then everything that went out throughout the entire game. But I mean, Alouettes Nation, they came together in such a way, and it was just magical, really. I mean, it sounds kind of corny to talk about it like this, but I mean, it was just fun. It was just a fun atmosphere, and just made for part of that experience. Like we talk about the experience at Percival Molson Stadium being second to none in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of ways that they can improve things as well. But I mean, for that game, for the Eastern semifinal, the way they handled everything was just absolutely outstanding. I gotta give props. Take tip of the cap, whatever you want to say. Like the Alouettes got it right.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of improving, I know we're jumping around here, but within the game itself, Cliff, one of the main things that we were quite concerned about going into the game versus Hamilton was the kicking game for the Alouettes, specifically with David Cote. After watching this game, and as we mentioned last week, hearing he did practice over Percival Molson before the game itself. Made it close on that first kick. I mean, he really made it close on that first kick, but he was perfect on the day. So that, whatever he needed to do, getting in the mindset, I think as you put it last week, to practice that Percival Molson made all the difference for him. And he obviously, David was an integral part of this win versus the Tiger Cats.
Without question. And one thing that I don't know if we touched on it last week was, after Cote had missed one of his field goals against Hamilton, Jason Moss, head coach, had kind of sat down beside him behind the bench, kind of put his arm around him and said, "Listen, you got." Like he said, "Don't worry about it. You got this. Whatever." Like he was just reassuring him, like just like a true coach would do. Like someone who still believes in you, someone who still has your back. Like just to let Cote know that, okay, this isn't what you were expected to do, but we got you. Whatever it is, we're going to get you through it. And sure enough, between that and yes, Cote practicing by himself at Percival Molson Stadium, so he gets the feel for the stadium and like just get in that mindset of, okay, I'm here to do a job. I'm here to kick field goals. I'm here to, I've got this. And yeah, you put in the work, you get the results, and that's exactly what happened with Cote. He was absolutely perfect on his field goal attempts, on his point after touchdowns. There
was some questioning at the beginning. Remember, because when it first occurred, the Alouettes punted and it was just over. It was just less than 50 yards, and you and I looked at each other, thinking, does he have a limit, so to speak, that Moss is willing to do? Mind you, we didn't have to question anything longer than 50 for the rest of the game because everything was within 40.
Right.
So, but yeah, no questions, and let's hope it continues when we head over to the Big Smoke. So,
yeah, no, give David Cote a lot of credit. I mean, whatever was going through his head, if there's any sort of mental miscues or mental blocks in, I kind of feel like he's over it now. I think he knows what he has to do. He knows he can do this. The moment can't be too big for him. It didn't feel like it was this past Saturday. And the fact that Jason Moss, he made it very clear. David Cote is my kicker. He will get it down. He will get it right. He will get it figured out. And he did. So top marks to both Cote for stepping up when he was absolutely called upon, and credit to Jason Moss as well for standing by his man, by sticking by Cote, saying, "I've got your back. Don't worry about it. You've got this." That's what you want out of your head coach, to inspire everyone on the team.
Is it Tammy Wynette that sang "Stand by Your Man"?
Yes, it was, as a matter of fact.
Stand by your man. Anyways, speaking of the things that we were worried about going into the game was, we weren't really sure when it came to the quarterback who was going to start. We knew it was going to be Matthew Schiltz, but we didn't know how Bo Levi Mitchell was going to play how much of a part he was going to play in this game. It really was there really weren't any issues because Bo Levi really did not play a part at all in the game up until 6 minutes left in the actual game itself. And the Owls defense, just as they have been all year, the Owls defense stepped up, roughed up Schiltz, blocked passes, interceptions. They did what they needed to do, and like I said, they were, Schiltz did Schiltz things. He still had, he's known to be able to just drop back and run. He did do that, but the Owls were able to really contain Matt for most of the game.
Yeah, and we will always be Matthew Schiltz guys. There's no question about that. He is a good football player and an even better person off the field. You're not going to find any slander for Matthew Schultz on this podcast at all. But man, Montreal really took it to him. They gave him fits. He had to work for everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he simply had no answer for this Alouettes defense, and it's crazy to think. I mean, I had said, like, based on what we've seen so far from both Levi Mitchell in 2023, if the Hamilton Tiger-Cats were going to win this football game, it was going to be because of Matthew Schultz. That didn't turn out, unfortunately. I don't blame Schultz for the loss. It truly was a team effort. What was really head-scratching is throughout the week, they had said they determined that it was going to be a 2-quarterback system, a platoon system. It was going to be both Schultz and Mitchell were going to be playing. Kind of gave the impression that they would be splitting duties. Like it would be like half-half. Like maybe one starts the first half, the other goes the second half. And of course, plans can change depending on how the game was going. I mean, maybe if Hamilton was leading at some point, maybe do you stick with a hot hand or do you just go with somebody else? It's all speculative, really. But the fact that Bo Levi Mitchell, the prize acquisition last offseason for Hamilton, the guy who was supposed to lead Hamilton to the promised land, to be able to play the Grey Cup at home again, like they did in 2021. That's why they brought Bo Levi in. And you don't play him until like 6 minutes left of the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Like that's puzzling. And again, no disrespect to Schultz and what he was able to do, but it just wasn't working. Like obviously the Alouettes had his number. Like why Orlando Steinhauer didn't go to Bo Levi in the second half to me is even if it was just for 1 or 2 series, just to give Matt a chance to kind of see things from a different perspective and maybe get a little more insight from the sidelines while Mitchell plays. I don't know why. Again, the only person who can truly answer that is Coach Steinhauer, but it was just baffling to me. Like at that point, by and large, the damage was done. Once you put Bo Levi in, and Bo was no go. Unfortunately, he just didn't. He was not going to be the guy that was going to lead the comeback if there was one to be had. It just wasn't that. Like it's just crazy to think that that he was the prize. He was the missing piece, so to speak. Like he was going to be the guy that was going to do it this year. And yes, he was felled by injuries for nearly the entire season. I mean that's the unfortunate part. But I mean that's still the guy that you expected to lead you to the Grey Cup. And you don't play him. By the time you play him, it's already too late, or at least it was pretty much too late at that point. And he just wasn't going to get the job done.
Yeah.
And again, for any number of reasons why this happened, the way it turned out the way it did, we'll never truly know. But it was just really, really surprising. Like, and again, still no disrespect to Schultze for how he played, but why wouldn't you go to Bo Levi in the second half? Because the game was still attainable. I think it was like 14-6 at halftime, if I'm not mistaken.
14-6 at halftime, yeah.
I mean, you're essentially down a score, and if you didn't feel like Schultz was getting it done, put Bo Levi in. What harm could come of it? But lo and behold, I guess they thought, okay, well, Matty got us this far. Let's give him a chance to right the ship. And unfortunately, it just was not his day.
Actually, even if he would have come in, it would have been 17-6 by that time because the Owls got the ball coming out of the second half. So
right.
Yeah, some other very noticeable things that we talked about, and obviously, if you want to, you can head back to our Flight Deck Live from Percival Molson last Saturday. It's available over on our YouTube page. Some of the other things that stood out is Cody Fajardo. And this could easily bode well, and if it could easily become a thing this coming Saturday versus Toronto in the East Final. But Cody runs for his second most yards in his career in the playoffs. he didn't lead the team. He didn't lead the team in rushing, but he came very, very close. I mean, Cody. I don't know, man. Cody ran for 62 yards.
I've joked about it all year. Fajardo is a Latin word that means run for your freaking life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what he does. I mean, but give him credit.
But give him credit. These were drawn. You could tell it was. Well, we were talking about that with Schultz. Drop back and go. That's exactly what happened with Cody.
Yeah, it wasn't happy feet. He didn't have the happy feet. He didn't. He didn't run into his own lineman or anything like that. Like these were designed draws for him to scamper and get 10+ yards every time.
27. That was his longest. 27 yards for Cody Fajardo.
Like if I'm William Stanback, I'm like, yo, dude, I could do that. In fact, he was doing that. So
yeah,
why you got to hog the ball and all the running, man? Like it's just incredible. Like I my God.
Stanback upped him though. Stanback did up him. He had a 38-yarder. So
well, listen, Stanback was definitely motivated as well. I mean, we've seen over the past few weeks. He's been running angry. He's been running with purpose. And again, he wasn't going to catch the rushing title, not by a long shot, but come playoff time, this is where you see the real William Stanback. And that if that doesn't get you excited, Alouettes fans, I don't know what will, because when William Stanback gets the ball in his hands in November, good things happen. And that's exactly what happened this past Saturday as well. He just ran with purpose. I mean, he had a couple of real, like that 38-yarder you were talking, yard run, like he was bowling people over too, and he's just, that was the William Stanback we knew and we expected this year as well. So it was great to see him, and again, couldn't come at a better time as far as I'm concerned for Alouettes fans.
Yep. Other things that we need to talk about, obviously, and specifically point out before we get to the superlatives and get to the actual stats and stuff, is I don't know if anybody happened to notice that in his post game interview with Austin Mack that he had a toucan, or no, he had a toucan at one point because we saw him post game with a toucan, but he had a Band-Aid, basically right square smack dab in the middle of his forehead. And if you hadn't watched the post game show, you would have wondered why. Well, it all came to a head, no pun intended, right before the end of the first half, where Mac just got creamed. I mean, he got smoked by two Ticat defenders, and he looked a little shaken up. You and I both saw him coming off the field, putting on one of the cold coats and heading into the locker room. That's what you and I thought. He did. He headed to the locker room because I think they wanted to make sure. They didn't say officially concussion protocol, but they just wanted to make sure he was okay. Obviously, he had a cut, obviously, on his forehead. But the interesting thing is, though, is because of something that had occurred on the field, Mac literally had to rush out of the locker room, because obviously he's able to come back in because he wasn't taken off the field, so it doesn't mean 3 plays. He was able to come back in to take part in that particular play, and you know what? It's funny. I think Mac maybe right now maybe the only player that we know of that can get smacked, locker room, out because of somebody else couldn't make it to the play, and dude, he scores a touchdown that puts the Alouettes up. That basically, I would say, would seal the game right there, which put the Owls up at that point. Basically, as I said, put the Owls up at that point of 14-3.
I wouldn't say it sealed the game necessarily, but I mean, it definitely was. You have to score touchdown.
14-6. Sorry.
Yeah. Essentially, again, you're not going to beat Hamilton just with field goals and rouges. You had to score touchdowns, and that's exactly what happened. I think that if anything, I think that sort of started the fire. That sort of sparked the Alouettes offense at that point, because at that point you knew, okay, we got a tutty. Now we build on this. Now we start piling on the points, and the defense has to start, closing things out and slamming the door on this Hamilton offense as well. But yeah, Austin Mack kind of coming in, blood running down his face. I think Cody Fajardo in his post-game presser had referred to it as like, this is like a movie moment. Like it's something that you see out of Hollywood, like running out of the tunnel, blood streaming down your face. And then you go and you catch the touchdown. It was like, like Disney couldn't script something like that. Like,
yeah,
I'm sure it made a great visual. And even actually, the CFL did actually put out a cinematic version
I
of
saw that too. Yeah, for each game.
Yeah, and when you saw Max touchdown celebrate, like you just see it, like just that guttural yell, like that, like let's go kind of thing. Like it was just absolutely outstanding. Like so I guess maybe you could make a movie out of it if you really wanted to, but
sure,
just an absolutely outstanding effort from Le Big Mac, and man, what a year he's had. I mean, from virtually unknown in training camp to most outstanding player nominee for the Alouettes, and now he can say that he has scored a professional touchdown in a playoff game.
Exactly. And as we also mentioned too during Flight Deck Live, is that this was the coming out game for a lot of players, because obviously for a lot of these guys it was their first ever playoff action. And man, somebody that we had not even mentioned the entire year stepped up, stood out, scored a tutty, catch, bobble, catch, touchdown.
Welcome to the Jake Hardy party.
I was about to say, yeah, for Jake Hardy, man. And it's, I know what he's, I bet you I saw him post game, and I saw him on some of his post game. He would have been a guy I would have just passed on the street.
Yeah, you wouldn't know him from a hole in the wall just by looking at him. But wow, what a game! And it's funny, like you think about like the usual suspects when it comes to the Alouettes offense: Austin Mack, Tyler Snead, Tyson Philpott. They all contributed. They all made plays happen. They all did great things in moving the ball. But Jake Hardy was just like almost like a check down option. Like national receiver, he's got to get in the game somehow. And wow, for Cody Fajardo to find him essentially on a check down, and what a touchdown. I mean, just we were holding our breath, and then you see the bobble of the ball, like, oh no, and then recovered, to his credit, recovered it, scored the touchdown, and that was what sealed the deal for the Alouettes. Like that was just an outstanding effort. Like he's been great on special teams this year. Only just recently, over the past couple of weeks, is he getting more and more involved in the offense. Like, oh yeah, that's right. Jake Hardy plays for the Alouettes. Like it sounds insulting to say. Like you just don't hear a whole lot of him, but it was just he's become one of those unsung heroes. Like just one of those guys that just goes, with that lunch pail, blue collar work ethic, just goes in, does the dirty work on special teams, but was given a chance to shine. And what a moment to shine. I mean, for everything that he's gone through, for wondering if he was ever going to play professional football again, for him to shine on a big stage like that, incredible, absolutely incredible. You got to take your hat off to this young man. He never gave up. He never gave up on his football dream. He never gave up on being a member of this organization. Like it was pretty awesome to see Jake Hardy have that moment in the sun, and wow, just absolutely wow.
Yeah. Before we talk about the defense here, because some guys balled out so badly. I mean, it's Cody Fajardo, 15 of 23, one interception, 2 TDs. Again, C3 strikes again, right? Consistent Cody. William Stanback led the team in rushing, 18 rushes, 95 yards, 5.3 average. Talk about Cody and his 62. For the wide receivers, leading wide receiver was Tyler Snead. He had a nice 32-yard scamper. 27-yard scamper, 50 yards. Austin Mack, 3 receptions for 46 yards. Jake Hardy, 31 yards. Tyson Philpott, 39 yards. William Stanback got into it, 25 yards. James Tuck, 21 yards. Again, the guys did what they needed to do. And obviously it's going to be big next week. Talk about the offense, Cliff. We can't, before we continue, we got to talk about the defense. A few things from this defense: interceptions, 5 sacks, holding the CFL's regular season leader in yardage to no yards.
Absolutely phenomenal. I mean, that was no small feat. Again, Tim White is a phenomenal receiver. He's shown it all year, leading the league in receiving yards. Like they even call him White because he is him, like that, like him White. Like, and I thought, okay, well, this guy's going to be a problem. Like we didn't see him for the last regular season game, just like we didn't see Schultze or James Butler running back for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Like, okay, they're clearly resting those guys for the Eastern semifinal. Smart move because they're going to be relied upon very heavily. And well, we didn't see a whole lot from Butler. We already talked about what happened with Schultze, unfortunately. But for Tim White to get nothing, like literally nothing out of this defense is unfathomable. Like you could have given me 1,000,000 to 1 odds. I'm like, no, give me a break. He's gonna catch at least a touchdown. He's got that shut him out completely. Get the hell out of here. That's not happening. But lo and behold, this ridiculous Alouettes defense did exactly that. They slammed the door on this team numerous times. I mean, to hold them to 4 field goals is phenomenal. Like,
oh, here's one for you, by the way. I mentioned it when we were chatting in the Turf District podcast chat the other night. In the regular season and in the postseason, Cliff, in the 4 games that they played versus the Hamilton Tiger Cats, they held Hamilton to 1 offensive touchdown the entire year.
I was going to say if I didn't see it, I wouldn't believe it, but I did.
And
see
you were
it,
there for
and
the game. You were there for the touchdown, by the way. You were in Hamilton for the touchdown. You were there, and I was in Hawaii. So you were there for the touchdown.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible to think about just how well this Alouettes defense has played against Hamilton this year. Like, and we talked about, okay, they won the season series. They shut them out like 3 games to 0.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about, okay, well, winning that 4th game is extremely difficult. Like, well, yes, typically it is, but my God, someone forgot to tell the Alouettes because I won't say they handled Hamilton quite handily, but I mean, what they did was more than enough. And Hamilton, for whatever reason, couldn't get anything going other than 4 field goals. I mean, what blew my mind more than anything else is after Fajardo was picked off deep in the red zone, Matthew Schultz had to start from his own 6. I'm like, okay, no problem, 2 and out, or okay, here comes a pick 6. Here comes you force him to punt, and you're going to end up with great field position. Nope, Schultz just did what I know he can do, and he just went to work, and he drove the Hamilton Tiger Cats down the field, just constantly first down, just kept inching along. And for some reason on that particular series, the run defense was non-existent. Like, why are you letting these guys literally run all over you? I couldn't figure it out, but all of that, and then you just end up with a field goal. Like, that to me was just like, I don't get it. Like, 1, why is the defense letting this happen? And 2, you're able to finally solve the Alouettes defense, and you walk away with just 3 points. Like, I don't know who gets the blame for that one, but I mean, I guess that was just kind of a part and parcel for what the day was for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. I mean, it's just they always say, some days you're the dog, some days you're the hydrant. It just, that's just what it was for Hamilton.
What else? And by the way, before we wrap this thing up about the game and start previewing the East Final, what else can you say about Darnell Sankey and Sean Lemon?
Man.
And more. Those are just 2 of the names that really stood out. I mean, Staffa, that helped, and then
Reggie Stubblefield once again.
Stubby, yeah.
Should have had that. And we told him post game too. It's like, you owe us push-ups. You had you made that pick, you had nothing but real estate in front of you. And he's just like, I know.
Yeah.
Just,
and Deontay Ruffin also with a fumble return or fumble recovery.
Yep. And it was funny because he was getting picked on a little bit throughout the game, and it was kind of one of those shades of KB and Ento against Toronto earlier this year.
Speaking of Kavian, so close. A guy, I said, we've said it before. We've been on his ass all year, but stood up, came this close to getting a pick. This close.
That's what the secondary is for the Alouettes. They're just dangerous. If they're not getting picks, they're at least it's pass breakups. They're just getting in people's grills. They're just making life miserable. Like they're stopping drives cold. It's so great to see. It's just absolutely outstanding. Wesley Sutton too, just an absolute monster. It's just wow. I mean, there's not much else you could say about that. But yeah, go back to Darnell Sankey and Sean Lemon. Sean Lemon actually called his shot before the game started. He said, they asked like, "What do you think about Matthew Schultz versus Bo Levi?" I said, "I don't care. I'm going to sack them both." And he did. Darnell Sankey, what an addition! And this was an addition. This was a prime time acquisition made for games like this. He had sacks. He had, my God, he had an interception. He had a sack. I think he had 2 sacks actually.
He had 2 sacks, yeah.
Like played like his hair was on fire. Like, and that's what you want out of like you make the move, you make the signing to get someone like this for these moments. And big credit has to go to Danny Machocha for being able to sign the Sean Lemons and the Darnell Sankeys, knowing full well like these are the complementary pieces that are going to get you over that hump, that are going to get you to be playing football in November and beyond. Just what a coup! What a coup! The team that this man has put together is absolutely phenomenal, without question. It is far beyond what anybody had thought. Let's not forget, everybody and their mother thought this team was going to be DFL this year, and well, they didn't get that memo either. They don't get a lot of memos about how bad they're supposed to be, and
yeah, exactly. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. Also, can't forget about Dequoy getting an interception at the end of the game. And we'd be remiss if we didn't happen to mention it because we talked about it before. And then from here, we'll talk. We have a guest coming in to preview the East Final, but we have to talk about this the scrum, which ended up being, by the way, up until this point, the Owls didn't have a single penalty, not a single penalty the entire game. I was like, wow, did not see that coming.
No.
But what was our first penalty and what was the cause?
Well, okay. This was after the Dequoy interception that by and large meant, okay, game over. Game over. The Alouettes are going to the Eastern Final. Hamilton's going home. Alouettes line up, play gets off, and I believe it was a run play, if I'm not mistaken, to stand back just to try and bleed some time because you couldn't go into victory formation just yet. You had to at least get another first down, or at least, you have to get at least another first down to try and, at that point, take a knee and bleed the clock. Jake Hardy and Chris Edwards of the Hamilton Tiger Cats got tangled up, and Edwards decided, well, I'm not going to the Eastern Final. My season's over, so the hell with everything. I'm just going to start beating on this clown. And he started wailing on Jake Hardy. And of course, we're seeing it in the stands, and everybody's up in arms. And sure enough, both teams come together, and Chris Edwards is still trying to kill people. From what happened from there, just turned into a complete melee, a complete Donnybrook. Players were coming off both benches to get involved in the scrum. Flags were flying. It was just it turned into a Royal Rumble plot practically. Just a complete gong show.
Guys in helmets taking swings. I've never gotten it.
Yeah, and that's what led to us all being, like everybody was up in arms, like in the stands, like we saw what happened. Like I literally saw like Edwards reaching back and just starting to pound on. I guess it was Jake Hardy. We didn't see it at first, but it was ended up being Jake Hardy that he was wailing on.
Yeah.
But then Joshua Antwi ran in and tried to confront Edwards for that. Ended up getting pushed into a referee, and I was worried because I thought, oh shoot, he just knocked over a referee. Oh, damn it! Like,
yeah, I saw that too. Yeah, luckily he was pushed into a referee.
First of all, what the hell are you like? We talked about this last Saturday. Like, I understand you're playing for the man beside you, to the man on your left, the man you're playing for your brothers. I get that. Someone goes down, you want to help them out. Antwi should not have left the bench. Regis Sibasu also came off the bench to get involved in the whole thing. And as soon as I saw the referee gets knocked down, I'm like, oh crap, like not good, because you know that the CFL and all football leagues have pretty much just say you cannot put your hands on an official. That's automatic suspension, or first automatic ejection and then automatic suspension. And like, oh, you guys are going to be playing next week. You can't be involved in this nonsense. And it took a good while. And this is also too it was at this point too that the PA people decided to start playing Imagine and calm everybody down and all that. But when they were sorting through all the penalties and who was getting tossed out and everything like that, like it was crazy. Like just watching. Eventually, cooler heads prevailed. And
yeah, 3 cats got tossed, 2 owls got tossed.
Yeah, again, Sibasu and Antwi got tossed because they left the bench to get involved in this. Thankfully, no mention was made of the referee being knocked down. And looking upon it afterwards, it actually was accidental because it was actually a Hamilton player that pushed Antwi in. And he inadvertently fell into the referee. So it wasn't like he knocked down the referee intentionally. But as we saw earlier this year, I think it was Jake Cereza from Edmonton. As part of a celebration of a quarterback sack, he did a little flippy-do and accidentally bumped into a referee. He got dinged for that. So,
by the way, it was one person who got ejected, and that was Antwi. Yeah, the other unnecessary roughness went to Hardy. Obviously, the disqualification went to Edwards on Hamilton, and also unnecessary roughness to Bennett and to Bayless. I think they also got ejected too because they came off the bench.
Right.
But all to say this. If you're watching the broadcast, and if you haven't yet, you need to go back and watch it. It's about the last, it's under a minute where this occurs. This just goes to show how much of a leader he is, and how centered and how he's paying so much attention to this team and trying to get to our goal is what head coach Jason Moss said. They had to use the mute button a couple of times. But to give us the Cliff Notes, give us the Cliff Notes there, Cliff, on what Jason Moss said to the refs.
Well, because the referees basically went up to him and said, listen, we got to do what we got to do. And I guess they're talking about with players being thrown out, especially Antwi for coming off the bench. And what Coach Moss had said, and again, it's not verbatim because I really should have wrote that down because it was great. He just basically said, listen, we're playing next week. They're not. This is unacceptable. Like, again, he's right. He was absolutely right. I mean, I think he was pissed off at his players for what had happened, for their part in this thing. But the fact that Hamilton, like for Chris Edwards to go off like the way he did.
Yeah, and the team had not been goated all day, even though as much as Hamilton was trying to goat the Alouettes, as the defense was trying to goat them. Didn't happen. Up until this one point, again, didn't happen.
But one thing with Jason Moss, especially being involved in that whole kerfuffle, he didn't lose his cool. He didn't lose.
No.
He was actually very level-headed, very if anything, he was trying to calm other people down. I mean, I saw Coach Greg Quick get right up in someone's grill and I thought he was going to throw hands, but like I said, once again, cooler heads prevailed. Eventually people got separated and all that, but I mean, people have given Jason Moss the gears over the years for how he's been as a head coach. When he was out in Edmonton, whether it was the throwing Gatorade jugs and F this, F that, like he was just, constantly yelling and screaming and throwing shit around. I mean, he's not that guy anymore. Like, yeah, he was pissed. He was clearly upset at what had happened. Not impressed at all with, the fact that his players were involved with this as well. But he stood up for his guys. He made it clear, like, this is unacceptable. This is not who we are as a team, and we're not going to play these games. It's simply put, we're better than that. And I give him a lot of credit for being level-headed, for keeping the calm as much as he could. You could tell he was very incensed about what had happened, but you would have figured, okay, the old Jason Moss would have definitely been grabbing anything within arm's reach and throwing it all over the place. But he's not that guy anymore. Like he was angry. No, don't kid yourself. He was definitely angry about what took place. But
Moss doing his best Billy Martin impression.
Well, that
wrong sport, but I think people should get the reference. I hope.
Yeah, or Bobby Knight throwing chairs on the court.
R.I.P. Bobby Knight, baby.
Yeah,
John McEnroe. John McEnroe.
Any number of guys that just would lose their cool like that. Like the old Jason Moss probably would have been among that, but not this Jason Moss, not the head coach of the Montreal Alouettes, Jason Moss. And I've got to give full marks to him for it. Like he did what he had to do. He kept cool. He let the refs know he was upset, but he just wanted to get this game over with. And
yeah,
I have to give him a lot of credit for being the leader that he is. He
as I said, people go, if you have access to TSN On Demand, CFL On Demand, go and watch it. Go watch the last 5 minutes of the broadcast. 6 minutes of the broadcast.
Yeah.
Total.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was less than a minute left. It was just after Dequoy got the interception. That's pretty much when the whole thing went down. But just watch Jason Moss afterwards, and credit to TSN. I mean, they really, I think they were a little slow on at least one of his F-bombs. But
yeah, because it was mentioned on social media. Yeah, they were. But that's broadcast TV there, Cliff.
Hey, when you're live, anything can happen. We're proof of that.
Oh yeah. So needless to say, with all that had occurred, Alouettes walked away with a 27-12 win over the Hamilton Tiger Cats and have advanced to the Eastern Final versus the Toronto Argonauts at BMO Field. And obviously, we didn't feel that we could do justice, Cliff, just you and I just talking about the matchup that's coming up. And it could be a very historical matchup in many ways for both these teams this coming Saturday. So we had to invite a returning customer to help us talk about this game, didn't we?
We certainly did. Last year we had him on to preview the Eastern Final and did a fantastic job. So I thought, okay, you know what? It was so nice. We have to do it twice. So we are thrilled to once again preview this year's Eastern Final with CFL News Hub reporter Mike Mitchell. And we are so excited to be able to have the chance to talk with him, to get his thoughts on everything going on in Argo land. And this is a huge game. Definitely well worth, breaking this down and giving this the proper respect and accord that it deserves. So without any further ado, let's go right now to our man, Mike Mitchell. The Eastern Final finally has arrived. Once again, it's the Montreal Alouettes going to BMO Field and taking on the Toronto Argonauts. It's kind of like deja vu all over again. And joining us on the line once again, just like he did around this time last year, is CFL News Hub reporter Mike Mitchell. Mike, welcome back to the Alouettes Flightdeck. We are thrilled to have you on to talk about the Eastern Final between the Alouettes and the Argos once again.
It's right. It's great to be back with you guys. You guys have done a tremendous job all season long, and it's been a fun season and high drama on Saturday. Should be a great game. We're looking forward to it.
Now, let's talk about these Argos because my God, it's so funny. Like we talk about like the Grey Cup hangover all the time. We talk about how the Argos, after they win a Grey Cup, they kind of fall off the face of the earth for a couple of years, and then they find their way again. Then they fall off the face of the earth. It's crazy. But this year, They did not get that memo. The 2023 Argos did not get the memo that you're supposed to suck after you win the Grey Cup. What do you think it's been when it comes when we talk about this team as it sits right now at 16-2 and hosting the Eastern Final? What is it about this team that makes them just so good?
Yeah, there's so many layers to it. You know, when they won the Grey Cup last year, I think like the number one theme or mantra or message from Michael Clemens and Ryan Dinwiddie is for the Toronto Argonauts to not resemble some of their previous Grey Cup winners who kind of won the whole thing and then faded the year after. And then I think Michael Clemens, even the day they unveiled the banner, number 18, at their home opener, Clemens talked about how they're, you know, if what you did, I'm going to butcher this, but if what you did yesterday, if you're proud of what you did yesterday, then you're not doing what you're doing tomorrow. Basically telling the home base in Toronto that our plans are to win it again, to hoist another, you know, and they always say that. But when Clemens said that, you felt it like this is legit. So like they're striving for perfection. It's like a one game at a time, all the cliches, 1-0, 1-0, 1-0. And they've won 16 games. You can't, you know, no matter what happens on Saturday, and there's certainly going to be a lot of disappointment if Toronto does fall to Montreal in the East Final, you got to give a lot of credit to the Toronto Argonauts organization from top to bottom, the way they put together that roster. So many quality Canadians, great drafting, great American imports on their roster. I mean, I know they just got today. I just wrote an article about, you know, and it's all over the place about them getting 8 All-Star nods on the CFL team. 7 of those players are first timers. You look at the list of the guys like Javon Leake, of course, Chad Kelly. There's a lot of Quantez Stiggers is up. I mean, Vince Magri is one of the best kept secrets in the CFL. Former Canadian offensive lineman, has been a part of the Toronto Argonauts organization, the scouting department for a long time. He knows Canadian players and he also knows American players. And you look at guys like Dejon Allen from the XFL, Sean Oakman from the XFL. You've got Quantez Stiggers, who has no college experience, played in the fan control football league, an indoor football league. And so they leave no stones unturned. So that's Murphy, Alex Russell, Vince Magri, of course, Michael Clemens at the helm. If you look up and down Toronto's roster, you knew this team wasn't going to be a fluke, and wasn't going to be just a fly-by-night team that just happened to win the Grey Cup. They got on a run, and then they'll just fade away. They're built for long-term success, and this is their 3rd straight year in the East Final. They have a heck of a coaching staff. Ryan Dinwiddie's a tremendous head coach and play caller. You look at the work he's done with Chad Kelly, what he did with Cloud Bethel Thompson. You could argue Bo Levi Mitchell's never been the same since Ryan Dinwiddie left him. So I think a lot of people are like catching up to their surprise, but you look at Toronto, they're just so deep. And, you know, their roster, so you can tell how deep their roster is. They had nothing to play for the last 6 months. So they were just sitting starters, resting guys, giving healthy scratches to AJ Willett and all this. And all these backups went out there. They took Winnipeg. They fought Winnipeg very hard with Cameron Dukes and a bunch of backup players not playing. AJ Willett was pulled in the first quarter. And then, of course, they just kept on winning, even with all these backups. And it goes to show you the quality of their depth in their organization, how much talent they have on their team. So they have the right mindset. They're a very good team. You know, when you win 16 games and you tie for the greatest regular season record in the history of the CFL, that's quite an accomplishment. But when you reach this point, I hate to be that guy. When you reach this point, if you don't get to the Grey Cup, if you don't hoist the trophy, it doesn't erase the accomplishment of a 16-win season that goes in history books forever, but it kind of knocks it down a couple of pegs. So there's a lot of pressure on Toronto. But, yeah, I think a lot of people who weren't the uninitiated that weren't paying attention, they found out this year how well together Toronto's been put as a team, and they saw how good of a team they are. So at 16 wins, they you know, they're going to be around. You know, they got they've locked up a lot of their guys. They're going to be contenders for the Grey Cup every single season. When they have Chad Kelly, when you have that combination, top tier head coach, top tier quarterback, locked in for your franchise, you're going to be good every year.
You're talking about, you know, will people remember? Does anybody ever remember that that New England went into the Super Bowl with an undefeated record? No, they don't. No, well, except for Miami Dolphins.
That's the truth.
Yeah, and also you look at Toronto and the history. They've not gone back to back since the Owls came back in '96. The last time they went back to back was 96, 97, and before that was right before the CFL was actually officially formed back in the the late 40s. So it's
a hard one. And this is who the Argos of today are being compared to, is those glorious 96, 97 teams. I mean, so they're being the measuring stick with Toronto is, I mean, they did it to themselves too. This is what Michael Clemens set the bar real high. Ryan Dinwiddie set the bar real high. The measuring stick, because of their accomplishments this season, all the All-Stars is ridiculous. 14 All-Stars on a 27-member East Division All-Star team. That's a lot. So to basically have more than half of your players on the East All-Star team. So the measuring stick is very high right now. Can Toronto meet it?
You talked about before about how basically, the Argos have really played some meaningless games over the past couple of weeks actually, it's funny, ever since they clinched the East by beating the Alouettes 23-20 at Percival Molson. How is it that, obviously you hear the coaches are going to say what they feel. Even Coach Moss is currently the same thing too. Everybody's talking about the 1-0 mantra, et cetera, et cetera. But you look at it, I'm trying to remember if there's actually a case in Alouettes history too where the same type that Chad Kelly currently is in, because he's played a meaningless game. He hasn't played a meaningful game in the past X number of weeks. I mean, yes, players can get up, they can get hyped, etc. But I've seen the word rust come up a lot. Is it Toronto versus the rust? How is Chad Kelly going to be? I mean, is Chad Kelly going to be the guy that we saw earlier in the year, or will the rust catch up to him?
What's interesting about that whole argument, and it's a valid one, is Toronto has kind of been playing loose ever since they clinched, as you said, against Montreal, 23-20 there. That was a tightly contested game. Ever since then, the Argos have been playing loose and easy and free. And, they have so much talent on their team. They have all these guys who've emerged and they've won games. But Saturday's East Final game, you can't quite keep that same mentality. I mean, there's going to be pressure in the air. They're playing against a very good Montreal team that's peaking at the right time. So they're clicking on all cylinders. Jason Moss has done a tremendous job with the Alouettes. They had some key pickups during the season. I saw this with Toronto last year. Like, Toronto picked up Ryan Hunter, who was named an All-Star today. Tremendous, acquisition from the NFL. They had drafted him several years earlier. Boy, did that pay off. He joined their offensive line, and their offensive line has been terrific ever since Ryan Hunter joined them. A tremendous move by Toronto getting him. Then you look at Montreal. They were good throughout the season, but the additions of Lemon, which is ridiculous that he was out there, and then Sankey. These are two tremendous pickups during the year. I found I was talking and communicating with people. I'm not going to mention any names in the CFL. And when I was frustrated that somebody like Lemon was still out there looking for work, it's like, I thought it was just ridiculous that, this wasn't a case where it's like a name value player who 5 years ago was an All-Star. He was like an All-Star last year. So it made no sense to me while he was still out there. And so I got people saying, well, bringing up character issues with him, or maybe he's a fading player. There's a lot of expletives I could use right now to describe my thoughts on that opinion. Sankey is a very good football player. Same thing. I saw this in Canada. It was pretty funny. Sankey's been a very good linebacker in the CFL for a long time. He led the league in tackles last year. And then when he went down south and went to the XFL, the narrative kind of changed on him a little bit. I saw some guys who are highly respected in the CFL media who said all of a sudden, well, Sankey's not that important. He's just a linebacker. Who cares if he left? He's good. He's not that good of a anyway. If he had stayed, probably the narrative would have been a little bit different. But then we see how good he is so Montreal, those pickups, they've done a very good job. We know Moss has done a great job. The synergy he has with Fajardo was important. Montreal's front office deserves credit. They lost big time players in the offseason. You get to watch Darius Pickett in double blue doing his thing. You guys have known how good of a player he is. Gino was gone, and a lot of people are like, how the hell do you replace these guys? And Gino's a very good player. And then you got Austin Mack and all these other players on the roster that have stepped up and played equally or better in some cases. So, I mean, Lawrence was a heck of a pickup there at center. So I think Montreal's front office deserves a lot of credit. Jason Moss deserves a lot of credit for that team's discipline. They're well balanced, and those key pickups in the offseason, the unheralded ones that have panned out, and then those stars they added during the mix is what has made Montreal better. And they're peaking at the right time. You know, they're a dangerous opponent. I've been teetering back and forth in this game. I feel like, and I'll just go on record with this, if Montreal beats Toronto, they're going to hoist the Grey Cup. And I know people out there who are Winnipeg truthers and BC Lions fans, and I get it. Those are two of the very best teams. They both beat Montreal during the season. I just feel like sometimes you get a sense about a certain team. If Montreal can get over this Toronto hurdle and get to the Grey Cup, I just have a feeling they're going to have so much momentum in that game and belief in themselves and confidence. They'll be underdogs once again when they get to the Grey Cup, regardless of what they do to Toronto. People will be dismissive of that. But I think if Montreal can get to the big game, I think they're going to hoist the trophy. I like everything about their team. I love the balance. I like the youth and the veteran leadership. They're a very good football team. I know some people are looking at the fact that they're 12-0 against everybody else in the CFL and 0-7 against BC, Winnipeg, and Toronto during the season. And so Montreal has to prove that they can stand up to the elite and overcome them and beat them. But there's no question we're looking at the 4 best teams in the league this weekend, and I think Montreal deserves to be in that conversation. It wouldn't surprise me. I know it probably sounds crazy to some. Wouldn't surprise me if they hoist a trophy, win the smoke.
Let's circle back to Chad Kelly for a second. Unquestionably, one hell of a year, and a lot of people at the start of the season didn't know what to make of him. They thought some of his comments they got kind of rubbed the wrong way with some of the comments he was making about him playing in the Canadian Football League, but he has answered the call every single time. And one can probably even make the argument, like, if Chad Kelly didn't get knocked out of that game versus Calgary, probably would have won that. If he started and played in the game against Winnipeg, probably would have won that. Like, this team could have been 18-0 had Chad Kelly played every single game. I think that's a fair argument to make. And it begs the question, like, what is it about Chad Kelly that makes what is it about Chad Kelly and how he responds with his teammates? Like, what makes Chad Kelly so good, such a good fit for this organization?
Yeah, he's a blue chip prospect from a talent standpoint. He's got great mobility. He can throw in the run. He can throw under pressure. He's got a tremendous arm. He's fearless, mobile, tough. Teammates love him. He connects really well with his teammates. The coaches love him. He's grown up. He's matured in Canada. That's a credit to Ryan Dinwiddie too. Helps that Dinwiddie is a former CFL quarterback, quarterback Boise State and all that. And so he has the background there. And Dinwiddie's very good with quarterbacks. You know, it's funny, last year when McLeod Bethel-Thompson, or maybe earlier this year, when it was announced that McLeod Bethel-Thompson was leaving for the USFL, no one in, and I got in trouble for saying this, but no one in the Argonauts organization was crying when MBT left. And that is I'm not trying to be disrespectful to McLeod Bethel-Thompson, good CFL quarterback. He led the team to a Grey Cup last year. So he quality starter in the league. I think he gets too much heat. But the Argos were happy that McLeod's salary went off the books, and because they were going to turn to Chad, from what I heard from everybody inside there, and I don't know if they would ever admit that publicly, they were going to Chad Kelly with their MBT. So I think the organization, Kelly is a superb talent, and what's held him back is maturity and consistency. And even I thought this year as a first-year starter that he would have hiccups, and he's had maybe a couple of games where he's not been great. But for the most part, I'm being nitpicky if I go there, because I think as a first-year starter in Canada, I think he was tremendous this year. The Argos really didn't need him to go out there and throw for 500 yards every week because they're so good at running the ball. Their defense is so good. Their special teams is so good. Boris Beatty had as a punter too. Unbelievable. So anyhow, missed only 2 kicks, and he led the league in punting. Beatty's a special guy. So anyway, I know you guys had him over there, and maybe there's some inconsistencies there. But anyhow, back to Kelly. Kelly's just a tremendous talent, and I think he's in the right situation. Had he gone somewhere else in the CFL, not trying to disrespect a place like Ottawa, but I guess I just did. But maybe if he went there, maybe he wouldn't have gotten the same coaching, the same kind of mentor, because he was mentored a bit from McLeod Bethel-Thompson last year. That helped him kind of ingratiate himself in Canada. And Kelly was highly motivated. He's got the right head on his shoulder. So he came with the right mindset into Canada. I know he's cocky and he can rub some people the wrong way, but in his house, he's been the perfect teammate and soldier, and he's well loved. So that's that he has a chance. I don't think I have a feeling Brady Oliveira is going to win the MOP for the league. It's pretty special what he did. Him being Canadian doesn't hurt. So and it's like a once in a lifetime kind of thing, but Kelly's very much deserving of it.
It's so interesting that you mentioned about it. Would it worked if he played somewhere else? Like, that Edmonton actually had his negotiation rights initially, and ended up trading them to
What a
Toronto.
great trade by the Argos. Again, they're Argos front office. They traded Arbuckle for Kelly's rights and all that. That's another good one. I think Murphy deserves some credit for that too. Who's back with the Russian this year?
Trading a punter for Ricky Ray.
I was gonna say, Edmonton. If they see the 416 area code, they should just not pick up the phone because they're gonna get fleeced out of a quarterback. It's happened twice.
It's the truth. It's the truth. It's they're just like, that's one of the things that people don't really recognize, is like how good the Argonauts front. And when you start studying the roster, you'll see it. But Vince Magri, I can't. At some point, some CFL team is going to be smart and is going to hire Vince Magri at some point. For Toronto fans, hope they people keep making mistakes and don't hire. Yeah, you look at the Canadians they have on their team, like Curly Gittins Jr., all the all-stars they have there. They have their depth is so great. Like you don't need a ratio like with the Argos. Like even if you eliminated the ratio tomorrow, they would start plenty of Canadians over Americans. So it's just a really well-run organization, and that Kelly trade is one for the ages. That was a steal.
If you're looking at these two teams, because obviously the product, the sports writers are all writing their own things, but for you, if you were to center on one specific head-to-head for this game, what would it be? At whatever position it may be.
I think Montreal needs to eliminate the big Toronto. Like the way I see it, like Chad Kelly, going back to him. The Argos can break big runs on the ground too at AJ Ouellette. He's done that several times this year. So you got to slow him down too. You got to get in the backfield to slow him down. But I think you need to force Chad Kelly into mistakes in this game. You need to force Chad Kelly to be patient. We saw that in the last Montreal-Toronto game. When the game was on the line, Kelly was making, and so it's like, and that's something he did during the season. Whenever the fire was on and Toronto was in trouble, Kelly made big plays down the field. So I think that the biggest key to me is, because Montreal's defense is very good, no question about it. I think they just need to limit the damage. They need to make Chad Kelly and Toronto's offense earn it, drive the entire length of the field, rather than those quick strike plays. And so, the Owls have a good book on Toronto, having faced them 3 times this year. I know they were 0-3 in those games, but I don't count the middle game there, because to me, Montreal was purposely sitting starters and not playing guys. They took almost conceded that game, because in the back-to-back, the first and the third game were 2 of the toughest games Toronto played this season, and they could have easily lost both of them. So I think against the Argos, you have to limit the big plays, because he can strike at a moment's notice. And if Montreal can do that and maybe test Kelly's patience, because Kelly wants to go deep on you. He wants to challenge you if you play man against him. So I think that's a big key against Toronto's, to make their offense drive the length of rather than the quick strike ability. And that's one matchup I'm looking at. I think a lot of teams tend to abandon the run too quickly against Toronto. And the one team that stayed consistent with it, and I know it's a little bit, that game Chad Kelly got hurt, but Calgary consistently ran the football and were patient with it against Toronto. And I think you have to do that, because they're so good up front. Toronto, their pass rush is so lethal. They can get you from so many different angles. They have such a deep rotation. Corey Mace is a heck of a defensive coordinator. They'll blitz Cody Fajardo coming off the bus. I think Montreal needs to stay patient running the football. A lot of times in these games, these teams that play Toronto, they struggle early on, then they abandon it, and then you're playing right into Toronto's hands. If you're playing second and long, and against that pass rush, that's the one thing I lost track of how many sacks they are. I think it was about 70, so 68 maybe. So they really, that's like one of the unheralded aspects of Toronto this season, is how good how deep their backups have, like 6 and 7 and 8 sacks. Like most people don't know who Brandon Barlow is coming off the bench. So like they're really deep in that area. You got to run against them when they have Folarin is tremendous pass rusher, but teams will run at him. So I think Montreal's got to run the football, and they got to limit the big play. If they can do those 2 things, I think they can win.
I look at the depth of this Argos team, and it's crazy. Like, if you're asking, like, what scares you the most, offense, defense, special teams, I'm like, all 3. I mean, like, further to the fact that you look at the CFL awards, and all the awards on the East side are all Argos, with the exception of most outstanding Canadian with Marc-Antoine Dequoy. I mean, the way this team is built, you've talked about it as just the depth, everything that this team has done to position themselves to be a repeat winner. I mean, do you personally see
they're really. It's tough. It's actually tough on them. Like their offensive line is really good. They gave 18 sacks all season. I think maybe 19. Their defensive line, I just went through that. They had about 70 sacks or whatever the hell it was. So I mean, the one area where I could see on Toronto where they could get challenged, and it's going to be interesting to see how they handle their secondary. Like this goes to show you how good their front office is, because Mason Pierce, who's like the replacement D, has played better than the guys who just made the or equal to. I don't want to go that far, but Robertson Daniel he got injured, and then and Amos got injured, and then and it basically Pierce has come in and played as well as those guys. But I think I would challenge, easier said than done. But I think I would challenge the secondary down the field. Toronto's given up some big plays down the field this year. You got to hold up with your offensive line against that pass rush. And you got to recognize where the blitzes are coming from and their disguises. But I think I would challenge. I know that's easier said than done. They have Jamal Peters. Quantez Stigers is up for Rookie of the Year. Tavares McFadden's a real good player. But there's some uncertainty there. What type of lineup Toronto's going to have this week if Robertson Daniel comes back? And which is like a scary thought. He hasn't played in a long time. But I would challenge them down the field. You got to hold up on front. But Toronto has had some breakdowns in their secondary. They have given up. They've had some games where they've given up yardage passing wise. So that's if you can hold up front and keep your quarterback clean. I would take some shots down the field against Toronto.
Defensively, I'm surprised. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm honestly surprised that Darius Pickett was the nominee for most outstanding defensive player. I mean, as we talked about, the depth is incredible on this team, but why not Wynton McManus? What do you think Darius Pickett did that Wynton McManus didn't?
Jack of all trades. You guys have gotten a chance to see Darius Pickett, but I think Corey Mace used him so well. He played everywhere. Like Pickett, it's hard when you put him as a cover linebacker because he was playing so much defensive back. He was playing at safety, playing in the box as a blitzer, playing against the run. He used them everywhere. Corey Mace used Darius Pickett everywhere. And so he was just effective at every role he was given. He was excellent in coverage all season long. And he was valuable because they lost two key safeties, two key halfbacks back there, and Robertson Daniel and Amos. Pickett at times was going back there and playing deep coverage. And so they had him covering the slot, covering inside, playing zone, man. Mace had a lot of fun. They purposely, like Toronto purposely targeted Pickett in free agency because they knew he's the type of player that fits their system. And so so they use him in every way. At McManus at the end of the year, I mean, this is second straight year being an all-star. I think a lot of the coaches around the league and a lot of people who followed the team closely, snap for snap, thought Pickett was like one of the best all around. It was his best year overall as a CFL player. It was one of the best all around CFL players. He's just really good at against the run, again, blitzing the quarterback in coverage. He just had a very good year. It was the perfect fit with Toronto. They knew exactly how to use him. The system highlights his talent. So McManus, you could probably argue that he's better player, more impactful, but I don't know. Pickett had impact in all three phases. So it's a tough one. It's a tough call. The Argos had a lot of those kind of players on their team that, you could have made an argument for. Their defensive tackles are really good. Dwayne Hendricks is a heck of a player. Doesn't get the publicity that he deserves. He's kind of overlooked because, defensive tackles don't have a lot of fancy stats, but he's a really good player too. So yeah, it's a good argument, but it's embarrassment of riches with them in their front seven.
Yeah. I kind of joked last week when the press release came out with all the nominees, and when it came to okay, we got to pick somebody from Toronto. Let's go. It felt like they just drew his name out of a hat. It's because you could have picked really anyone from that defense and could have made a very solid case for them. It's just incredible the amount, as you said, the amount of depth, the amount of pure power that this defense has in Toronto. It's scary. It really is scary.
And there are weeks during the season where like certain guys like Sean Oakman were just being healthy scratch. This is prior to the Argos just like clinching everything. It's like, okay, let's get Brinkman out there. Let's give somebody else some snaps, that hasn't been playing enough. So they can afford to. That's why they were able to survive so many key injuries to starters. They didn't have Enoch all season long, and I don't think they're ever going to have him. It's like the worst kept secret that Enoch Mwamba hasn't played at a single snap. He's been more of a media guy. So it's we'll see what happens with that. If if the Argos even get to Grey Cup, if Enoch shows up, we'll see. Maybe, I don't know, but he's more of a sideline coach guy than anything else. But yeah, they're very deep. The Toronto's has a very deep defense, and they have so many guys who could have gotten accolades. It was funny because like a year ago, the CFL had a faux pas where they listed I think it was 16 Argos that made the East All-Star team, and everybody said, "Whoa, what the hell?" And rightfully so, like Andrew Harris was getting the nod and stuff, and he was injured like the whole season. But this year, when you see the 14, you didn't bat an eye. It's like, yeah, they're really good everywhere. So it's kind of the way it went.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, like I said, the CFL awards, the nominees for the East, it's essentially all Argos with the exception of one. During the after the Argos had basically clinched the Eastern Division. Of all the players that you got to see, like as you said, a lot of the stars were given days off to rest and keep them ready for this coming game. Of the people of the players that you see that kind of stepped up and took over, who would you say have been the most impressive, and who is someone that potentially could be playing on Saturday and that Alouettes fans should be keeping an eye on?
The player who I think is like the lifeblood of the Argos, the guy who's like to me the most important player. And everybody focus on the quarterback. I get it. Chad Kelly, how he performs is very important. AJ Willett, he's a galvanizer. He's like when he gets going, and when he plays well, it fires up the entire. He's such a hard. You have to, if you're an opposing defense, hit him in the backfield before he gets any steam. He's just a tremendous blocker, tremendous catcher, great runner. They held back on him because he could have had a better season. The Argos pulled the reins back. And I know people are talking about Andrew Harris coming back, and they have a deep backfield, Javon League, Daniel Adebaboye, all those guys. But I think AJ Willett is the guy. If you want to beat Toronto, I think you got to slow him down or stop him. So contain him. Because once he gets going, he's averaging 6-7 yards a carry, running over defenses. By the time the fourth quarter comes, like the Argos were really good in the second half of games this year in the fourth quarter. He just wears defenses down. I think he's a dynamic player who doesn't get the credit he deserves, and would have had a much better season. He went over 1,000 yards, but he would have had a lot more if they didn't sit him, pull him. Even against Winnipeg, they played him for like a quarter. He had almost like 80 yards and a touchdown, and then they just pulled him out of the game. This is the game that Kelly didn't play. So I think that's a player that's like very like unheralded. It's hard not to notice him, but I think sometimes people forget, the whole Thor thing and all that. But I think I think he's one player that's like really important for Toronto. Is like a kind of special player. His style of play is how they play, and he works so well with their offense, with the Argos offensive line. And the Argos are a very good running team. So, and
it's interesting you say that, because I mean I factor him in as like one of the players you have to respect him. You have to almost game plan for him, because I said it last year and it still holds true this year. It's like trying to tackle a bowling ball. He's almost impossible to tackle. It's crazy that at one point, I think during those two Montreal games at Personal Molson Stadium the Argos played in, they managed to keep him respectable, but still he was able to break off a couple of massive runs. I mean, the guy really is almost impossible to stop.
Yeah, don't let him get to the second level. That's why, like a lot of times when I do these previews and I kind of like write from the other side and I say, what do you got to do against Toronto? And I'm for blitzing on rundowns, like getting in the backfield and getting in there. Don't let him pick up steam and get to the second level. I mean, and then you see that in the second half of games, like you kind of corral him, slow him down, and then by the fourth quarter he's running over your DBs. So it's like it's a 4-quarter job against him. I think he was a team captain with Nathan Rourke at Ohio. So I followed his career for a while. And he's just one of those guys who's a difference maker for his team. He galvanizes. His energy level brings up an entire team. Just one of those players that makes players better around him. So he's a special back. I know Brady Oliveira, what a special season. Awesome. But AJ wasn't that far behind. His numbers would have been a lot better if they didn't just, put him put that car in the garage. So yeah, and it's good that you noticed that, Cliffy. It's hard not to notice it, during the games, playing against Toronto.
If the Alouettes are able to control Willette like they did in that last game at Percival Molson, I was just checking out his stats now. I mean, yeah, he had his obligatory touchdown, and he had his obligatory long run of 27 yards. But the Owls kept him in check. Other than that 27-yard run, 10 carries for 53 yards. Do the math. They kept him in check. If the Owls can do that again, it's going to go a long way for them to getting that W on Saturday.
Yeah, it's important, like you said, long run of 27 of those 53 yards. And, if you get the Argos in the second and long, then he's only going to have 10 carries a game. So that's like, the problem is if he keeps getting the ball, if he gets to the 15-20 carry mark and it's late in the fourth quarter, and then, he can do more damage. So you're right. It's a big key to the game. And Montreal played Toronto very tight in that last game, and they had an opportunity to win that one. And they're going to have an opportunity to win on Saturday too.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Even though I think a lot of Owls fans are worried, like, okay, last time they played at BMO Field, they just got dog walked by the Argos. I don't think it's going to be the same style of game. I don't think you're going to see that same energy from Montreal that you did back in September. I think it's going to be a much different battle, and I think a lot closer. And I think both these teams respect what each other brings to the table, and I think both teams know how important this game is. And quite frankly, I think we're going to see. I'll go ahead and say it. I think this game is going to become a classic.
Yeah, and it has all the ingredients to become one. And I dismiss that kind of sandwich game, that game in the middle, where Toronto, on the scoreboard crushed Montreal. I hate to put it this way, because I'm not saying that Jason Moss and the team's not trying to win. Yeah, sure, you're trying to win, but with the short week. The first leg of the back-to-back, it just appeared so many of Montreal's players sat in that game. It just appeared to me that they were kind of, this term, he wouldn't say this publicly, kind of conceding that game. I don't think you're going to see a 39-10 type game. I definitely see a classic close. Odds makers are crazy for making Montreal a 10-point underdog. That's ridiculous. They
I'll
played
take the free money.
I don't know. Yeah, I'll take the free. I'm not saying Toronto's not capable, but not capable of like a late score to win by 10 or something like that. But I think this is going to be a close game. Not a lot of people are going this way, but I'm leaning towards Montreal in this game. I just think Toronto hasn't played a high pressure game since they beat Montreal to clean. And I think Montreal you've seen this in sports and in pro football, they're peaking at the right time. I think the Argos, I know they've had 2 weeks to prepare, although they didn't know for sure whether or not their evil Ontario buddies, Hamilton, were going to be showing up to BMO. But I know they know Montreal, but Montreal's different. Even though they met 2 months ago, Montreal's evolved as the season's gone along. So and there's going to be a lot of pressure on Toronto to win this game. And I think Montreal's got a us against the world thing, them being heavy underdogs, them having lost to Toronto already 3 times. Beating a team 4 times in one season is very difficult. So I definitely think the game's going to be close. And I know Argos fans will be very pissed about this, but I think Montreal is going to win the game. I think it's going to be close. I think Montreal, I just love what Jason Moss is doing. I think Montreal is very balanced in the playoffs. When you get to this point, the deep end of the water, you really, all those fish that are swimming in that sea deserve to be in it. And you only have to be better than your opponent on that one day. And if you ask me right now, which team is better overall, top to bottom, I would tell you Toronto. I'm not saying that's far and wide better but I think it's close. I think Toronto's a little bit better overall, but on one given day, all Montreal has to do is be better than Toronto on that day. And so all these teams are capable of winning it all, the final 4 teams that are left in the mix here. And look, last year, Winnipeg, for all intents and purposes, and rightfully so, was considered the better team than Toronto. Toronto was a very good team, but Winnipeg is Winnipeg. They won 15 games last year. And when push came to shove in the Grey Cup, Toronto got hot at the end of the season, and they found a way to hoist the trophy at the very end. So
don't you mean when punt came to block?
Yeah, when a punt or kick came to block. What a sequence that was. both teams with their kicks being blocked at the end there. That was crazy. And then Toronto losing their starting quarterback in the game, and then Kelly playing hero off the bench. Usually that's a death knell. It doesn't always work out. But sometimes it does, but it's not a great thing if you lose your starting quarterback in the middle of the biggest game of the year. And somehow Toronto overcame that. So
this atmosphere at BMO is going to be absolutely, they're projecting close to a sellout. That's something that I don't remember. I remember the days over at Sky Dome when they used to have a lot bigger crowds than what they currently have at BMO. And I know I know Toronto fans get that knock, but I mean it's going to be ruckus. I know there are going to be Owls fans we're going to be outnumbered, but Alouettes fans will be in the stadium. And man, if this game does turn in our favor, it is going to be very, very quiet. And then you'll hear it. You'll hear the ole, ole, ole. So
that's the key. Like Montreal has to avoid, when you're in that kind of atmosphere, you want to avoid getting off to a bad start, because then it could just steamroll. You could basically, you don't want Montreal to have a bad turnover early on, give up a big return and be down 14-0 or something like that, or 15-0 or whatever. And in that
was last year. That was last year. They cannot have a repeat of last year.
Yeah, and it can happen very easily in the road. All it takes is a couple mistakes, that energy, that atmosphere. They're going to be amped. I know the Toronto fans, because of 30 years ago was a different John Candy, all that. The Argonauts were a different fan base. They ruled the city, and the world has changed a lot since then. But the fans that do show up at BMO are tremendous. It's loud. The acoustics of that BMO's a nice stadium. Like, it's perfect for you feel that if you feel like you're on top of the action, it's great. The acoustics are great. It gets pretty loud in there, even when they have 15, 16, 17,000. So because just the way it's constructed, and the fans are very passionate that are there. So yeah, if you're Montreal, you can definitely silence it, but you got to be a little careful in the beginning of that game. One Chad Kelly bomb, a Javon Leak return, Cody Fajardo's pick six by Pickett, and all of a sudden it's like, oh boy, we've dug ourselves into too deep of a hole here to get out of it. So you want to
an Alouettes onside punt.
There you go.
But we don't talk about that.
I can't wait, because Toronto's had the game plan. That's
a huge variable. That's a huge variable, because you don't know.
Yeah, that's part of the brilliance of it. Oh yeah, bring the guys up. We might punt. So it's it's smart move. Moss has done a tremendous job this season.
They're obviously Toronto is chasing history. Obviously, I've already seen that written once already. I mean, yes, I get it. But people need to remember too, and I love these are the type of stats that I love. Toronto actually does have history chasing them. Everybody just has to remember what happened in 1989. No 16-win team has ever made the Grey Cup. Just talk to the Edmonton Eskimos of '89. So, and this was a Saskatchewan Roughriders team that came in at 9-9. Anything can happen in the CFL, obviously.
That's true. That's very true. And then I'd say I'd venture to guess, we've seen 500 teams in the CFL go on and win it. I don't think Montreal's like a Cinderella type team. I think Montreal's a really good team. It's just they're going to be tested. They're facing arguably the first or second best team in the CFL. So they get to the Grey Cup, they will have earned it.
All right. To sort of close things out here, Mike, this is going to be a chess match for sure. Like you talk about two phenomenal play callers, and Jason Moss and Ryan Dinwiddie. They're going to throw everything out there. Leave no stone unturned as far as doing whatever it's going to take to go on and go to the Grey Cup. What's going to be the biggest thing for both of these teams? What do you personally see as the one thing that's going to be the winner for each side? What's each side going to have to do personally themselves to advance to the Grey Cup?
I think Toronto is great out in front. So if they get in a position in this game where they command the line of scrimmage, which they've done all season, giving up the least sacks, having the most sacks, and they get in a lead, it's going to be difficult for Montreal to overcome that, because they're just really good playing out from in front. And I think if Toronto's got to get off to a good start here, you want to get over that jitters, because there's nerves and jitters when you're playing a playoff game. So I think Toronto gets into the flow of the game and they get off to a good start. I think that's going to favor them, because they're so balanced, so good at running the football and throwing and making big plays in the passing game. that I think if they get a lead and their defense it has the other team trying to chase them, that's usually where the Argos start make big plays, turnovers and all that. So they get the other team to play against type. For Montreal, I think we touched a little bit on this. I think you got to eliminate the big play. You got to slow down AJ Ouellette, and you got to eliminate the big play from Chad Kelly. Chad Kelly can strike down the field at any moment. So you have to force him into dinking and dunking, taking what the defense gives him, throwing into zones and coverage. He doesn't really want to do that. I know, Chad Kelly wants to challenge defenses down the field, so make him do what he doesn't want to do. Offensively, Montreal's very well balanced. In some of these, they need someone to step up in the passing game. And whether it be Mac or whomever needs to step up in this game and exert themselves and make big plays down the field. If they need to stay patient in the run game and they need to make big plays in the passing game in order to, because we never know what the weather at BMO Field. It looks like it's going to be, typical. It's not going to be anything crazy. It could get very windy, but I definitely expect a shootout in this game. I do expect a lot of points in this. So I think Montreal needs to maximize their opportunities. Argos are very good in the red zone. So you have to, when you get into scoring range, the Alouettes are going to have to close the deal, finish it off, and stand back. And that offensive line got to hold up, and they got to be balanced. I think it's very important that Montreal doesn't abandon the run. Too many Argos opponents just get away from it too early, and then they pay for it. They're not patient enough. You don't want to get into first and long, second and long kind of situations against. Doesn't favor you.
Wow. Well said. I said it before and I'll say it again. This game has all the makings of being a classic, and I got a feeling when the final whistle blows, whether it's Toronto or Montreal advancing, you're going to look back and say, that was a great game. That's how we felt earlier this year. Like the first game Montreal-Toronto played, it was a shootout. It was fun. It was, you look back and if you're a Montreal fan, you're disappointed because, dang, we lost. But you gave Toronto a run for their money. Like you said, that second game, throw it out, burn the tape, doesn't count. It was what it was. Third game, same thing. Just tight.
Third game was better than the first.
The third game was tremendous. Yeah. That was high drama. And I honestly wasn't sure if Toronto could pull that one off. The way I was like, wow, they really turned it on in the clutch moments of that game. That was pretty impressive. Toronto's first game against Montreal was for me, it was okay, Chad Kelly is the absolute real deal. Mm-hmm. When I saw that game, the way he performed in that game, and that was a tight one. And then that last game too, Kelly came up with huge plays at the end. So that was high drama that game. So I don't know if the Argos are going to be able to pull another rabbit out of their hat again. But I really like both these teams. The history between Montreal and Toronto is so beautiful, and the CFL's amazing. There's nothing better than the playoffs. So it's pretty hard when you get this close and you lose, and it's pretty exhilarating when you get this far and you move on and win. So it's but that's why the stakes are so high. That's what makes it so great. And so another great chapter in the Alouettes Argonauts.
Couldn't ask for anything better than that. Mike, we can't thank you so much again for joining us, previewing this Eastern Final yet again. Like I said, did it great last year, and now
let's do it again. Let's do it again. Yeah, let's do it again next year. Let's.
That's the thing. Based on how these two teams are constructed right now, we could be doing this dance every year. It's incredible. It's exciting. That's what makes this so much damn fun.
And I think you're going to get a lot of copycats out there. You see Toronto, Montreal success. You figure a lot of other teams are just going to go, let's just get I know Mike O'Shea is one of the great all-time coaches, one of my favorite. But I think a lot of people are going to go the Moss Dinwiddie way. Let me get that young guy who's kind of a quarterback whisperer type, and the Ottawas and all. Maybe if Chris Jones lasts in Edmonton, we'll see. But I think these two franchises, as you say, Cliffy, I think are going to be good for a while. Unfortunately, Hamilton's unsettled at quarterback. They don't know what the hell they're doing. Bo's trying to get out of there. Ottawa, it's been pretty rough few years for Ottawa. They have 14 or 15 wins since they made the Grey Cup. So it's just it's bad when your Ontario brother Argonauts have 16 wins in 1 year and you've got 15 wins or whatever it is since 2000. Not great. So but anyhow, but yes, Toronto, Montreal, they could very well be in this position once again next year as well. So thank you guys so much for having me on and let me ramble on forever.
Yeah. Before we let you go, where can we find you on social media? Give yourself a plug. Let everybody know where they can find you and your writings.
Sure. Thank you very much. I write at cflnewshub.com. You can check out my latest article on prepping, and I'm going to write a preview coming up soon there. cflnewshub.com. Cover the CFL and the Argos. I don't know what's going to happen with these crazy leagues, but I cover the USFL and the XFL, xflnewshub.com, usflnewshub.com. In a week from now, it could be UFL News Hub or NSFL News Hub. We'll see how that goes. I also write for the Jet Press. Recently wrote about the New York Jets. Fascinating team. I'd rather have Cody Fajardo than Zach Wilson. Same thing with Chad Kelly. So anyhow, but I cover the Jets at thejetpress.com. You can catch me on social media whenever I feel like tweeting at BYMIKE by Mike Mitchell, 2 L's at the thanks guys again. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being so friendly during this process and for having me on.
Well, thanks once again for providing this great insight. And like you, I'm looking forward to a very fun Eastern final this coming Saturday. And as they say, let the best team win.
Guy can talk. Doesn't matter, but he knows his stuff. Make sure you do go check him out on socials and everywhere he writes. That's all I can say. He knows how to break it down. He really does. He really puts a lot of work into what he talks about. So he knows what he's talking about. Some hot takes, I will admit. We'll see. One quick thing that we wanted to talk about, that I at least wanted to mention, that we didn't talk about at the beginning of the show there, Cliff, before we let everybody go and let everybody enjoy the rest of their day, evening, night, whatever it may be. I want to, props to the Alouettes. They really didn't do much last year when it came to the 25th anniversary of the U2 game, of the infamous U2 game. By the way, again, if you do want to listen to current Alouettes president, Mark Waitman, we had him on last year to talk about the 25th anniversary game. It's in our archives. Make sure you go listen to that. That would have been season 7. But bringing in the Quebec group, Joshua 2, it wasn't U2, dude, but they put on a damn good show. Yeah, if anybody's seen a U2 show before in person, they did all the visuals, all everything. I was like, they did a good job. So we're talking about it before. It helped with the ambiance of halftime, and it just, we were that much a couple days removed from the 26th anniversary of the infamous U2 game, which still, in my opinion, saved pro football in Montreal. So,
yeah, if I could offer just one slight criticism,
sure.
It's awesome that they brought in a U2 tribute band to do this, and yes, they did a very good job covering the U2 songs that a lot of us all know and love. But the one, and maybe it's because of the song title and the day the game was played. Who knows why they didn't go with Sunday Bloody Sunday, because that was the original tribute song that was played. But also too, previous playoff games were played on a Sunday, so it made sense to do it then. And maybe for whatever reason, they said, okay, well, it's a Saturday game. It would be kind of weird to have Sunday Bloody Sunday. I would have totally allowed it myself, but I mean, they did a fantastic job. It was definitely very entertaining. Give them props for that. And also kind of, like I said, that slight nod to that game 26 years ago. Like you said, it was just a couple days removed from that infamous game. And who was front and center in that game? Mike Pringle. Who was in attendance this past Saturday? Mm-hmm. Mike Pringle.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, just it was kind of like one of those full circle moments, if you will, just knowing that Mike Pringle was there to oversee it, and yeah, it was pretty special in a lot of ways. I'm not going to lie, but I just think it would have been really cool to have that homage again, like knowing full well.
They did the secondary one though. I will admit it. If anybody really cares to know what the song list was, I have it for you. They played 3 songs. Beautiful Day. That's what I consider their secondary song. If you don't play Sunday Bloody Sunday, it's Beautiful Day. That sort of continued on with the Alouettes. And they played Vertigo, and they played Where the Streets Have No Name. So, but yeah. I said the same thing to you. I said the same thing to you in stadium. So, but you know what? I'll take the secondary song of Beautiful Day. So, because it was a very beautiful day.
It sure was for Alouettes Nation from start to finish. From, as I said, starting at the tailgate all the way to the end, post game, everything in between. It was a beautiful day for the Montreal Alouettes.
Yep. So heading to this Saturday's game in the East Final at BMO Field, your boys from the Alouettes Flightdeck will be there. So stay tuned to our socials. Maybe we can meet you up at their tailgate that they're having this week, or within stadium itself. Or stay tuned to, we are going to have one. We just haven't determined where yet, but stay tuned for our win or lose for our post game Flight Deck Live. It's going to be rocking. Supposedly they're claiming close to a sellout at 25,000 over BMO. If that's the case, by all means, I'm all for it. The continued disrespect to Alouettes and Alouettes Nation is getting even funnier now, because if people don't know, yes, you can still get tickets, but the official section for the Alouettes are part, that have been made available to the Alouettes to sell to Alouettes fans is in the upper deck. One section of the upper deck, the last 3 rows. So I'll leave it at that. And as I said, I'm just thinking of 1989. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, you got to give that some context, Tim. I mean,
I did in the interview. If you remember, I did in the interview, but I'll say it again. No team that has won 16 games has made it to the Grey Cup. It's only one team.
but still.
No. But we will be back next week, obviously, for the show, for our recap. We will be talking to win or lose. We will most likely be talking to Cliff in his early days over at the Grey Cup Festival. So, dude, we're looking forward to talking to you then, obviously. But that's for next week. We got to find out what's going to happen this week. So, it's going to be a pleasure to be road tripping with you, buddy. And again, everybody stay tuned to our socials, because we're going to try to get enough out to you guys as much as possible this week.
Yeah, actually, I'm very proud to say that the Alouettes Flight Deck will be represented at Grey Cup throughout the entire week. A lot's going to depend on whether or not the Alouettes are going to be in the Grey Cup or not. Obviously, we're hoping they will be, because if so, then we've got some crazy stuff that we'd like to get done for you guys. If not, we're still going to give the same great coverage. We're still going to, show the love for the Alouettes that we've been doing all season long. We're just going to put a little bit of a spin on it with it being Grey Cup. Listen, there's a lot of stuff that we want to do, and I mean, I'm excited. I'm truly excited. I'm honored that the CFL still thinks highly enough of us that they want us to be a part of that. They want us to cover the Grey Cup, and by God, that is something that we are going to do. Whether the Alouettes are in it or not, we are going to give this Grey Cup the coverage and the respect that it deserves. So, By all means, if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're following us. Let us know in the comments. However you're taking in the Alouettes Flight Deck. Let us know what we're doing. Let us know what you want to see. Yeah. I mean,
and go to the YouTube page. Go to the YouTube page. Make sure you hit the bell so you know that when we go live.
That's it. I mean, we're going live. We will be going live this Saturday, regardless what happens at the end of the Eastern Final, and hopefully we'll be talking about something good as opposed to something not so good. But again, if you're subscribed, you hit the notification bell. You will be noticed, or you will get the notification when we go live. So be ready is all I have to say.
Exactly. We appreciate every single one of you. And as we announced recently, we want to thank all 30,000 plus of you who have downloaded and listened to our show over the years. We hope to do 30,000 more. We hope that, and we hope to entertain 30,000 more of you in the near future, obviously. So we will talk to you guys very soon. So for everybody here at the Alouettes Flight Deck, for Cliffy D, I'm Tim Capper. We're on Final Approach.